Well, welcome to New York.
Yeah.
I hope it's been a good visit so far. I see you were just at the Met.
We did that exhibition of the landscape work this was in the exhibition in Canada. And that's what, like I said, I was talking about these and, to be honest, we were just talking about a whole range of things, but these, wow. And these are, once again, ink, Japanese ink on paper?
Yes.
Wow.
That was a series I worked on of small pieces where, rather than using any brushes or traditional tools, I was dipping the paper into sort of a bath of ink and then moving the paper around to do different things to it, letting it dry different lengths of time, and then washing it off with sort of a blast of water.
Wow.
So that is just one example from that.
And this one
Actually,
here?
the other little one above that is also from that series.
This one here?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
So that's graphite on board. It's from a series I did called Silver Lining.
Okay.
And that's quite an old piece from, I think, about 2001. It's called the Truth and Lies of Friendship. And it was one of the early pieces. It has this kind of knot in the center of it. And I came back to using this sort of knot imagery more recently. So it's sort of fun to have it up there on the wall as a connection between what I did before and what I'm doing now, because there's a lot of other stuff in between.
Such as this one here, which was
yeah, this is again this continuous knot. Some of those smaller pieces that you were just over the sort of figure eight pieces were very early pieces in this series, and these are sort of more developed as I brought in a more geometric, like color came back into the work, and I started bringing in these sort of geometric shapes, impossible shapes, weird spatial things going on.
Now the knot is a bit of a cultural metaphor. Wasn't Alexander the Great? He solved the problem of the Gordian knot.
Gordian knot, yeah.
Yeah. Of course, he did it in a rather. How do you say? He cut it open.
I wanted to come to New York since my teenage years, and then I actually paid a trip here, and that sort of cemented it for me. But it was a number of reasons, some of it because of the art that's available here, and the dynamic art world that, of other artists as well. And some of it was just the people in general and the scale of the city, that there was so much going on. I felt like it could all coexist in this sort of crazy way, and nothing had to be swept under the carpet, really. It was all kind of just there, and that felt like a good fit.
Okay, yeah.
I think I've called it the Parade of Misfits before, and I fit right in with the Parade of Misfits. So.
Oh.
What's the squares over there?
Those are a little, this has traveled with me from studio to studio to studio. It was something that I made out of supplies that I was working on other pieces with, and it just kind of became a talisman for me in a way. It's sort of like a little good luck thing. I don't know, it's just a very personal thing. These are handmade kozo paper with sumi ink on them, and these strings of paper are actually, they're a sekishu paper that's almost like a tissue. It's like a silk tissue paper. I think I have, I can do a little demonstration. This is when people have their misconceptions about paper being so, like I work a lot on paper and people think paper's so fragile and what, you know, it's so delicate. And so this is this, this silk, this tissue paper, and you can sort of see, if I unwrap that a bit, how you know, it's very, you know, it's very like transparent and fine paper. But then if you just go like that, and you pull.
That's
Right?
pretty strong.
It's
yeah.
really strong, and that's just like a, you know, really like, you know, I don't want to cut your hand, but it's, you know, here, you can do that too.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Here.
All right. Yeah, okay, yeah. Yes,
You know, and that's just like a tissue paper, and like, you know, it just gives people an idea of, you don't really necessarily know these materials until you really start playing with them and working with them.
And that was a Rockefeller Foundation supported project or something like that?
Yes, the Rockefeller Foundation owns the
Bellagio's,
Bellagio Study Center.
which is kind of a manor house slash castle kind of building.
Yes, it's an old, a very, very ancient site near, on Lake Como,
Yeah,
near Bellagio,
Yeah.
Italy.
yeah. Very, rather prestigious award.
Yes, it was,
You know, it was.
It's quite a jewel.
Yeah,
Yeah, this was some of the work I was doing there.
yeah.
And I think one of the best things about that place for me was that I was the artist in residence at that time, but they brought together people from all over the world in all different disciplines. So I was there as an artist, but there was political scientists doing their project, and a physicist from the Middle East, a composer from Tajikistan, a woman involved with healthcare NGO from Uganda. You know, so it was a small group of about 9 or 10 residents, really involved in wildly different projects, but all kind of involving creative thinking or intense thinking in some way. So it was very stimulating.
What's this work here? Can you tell us a little bit about this one here?
This is part of the same series with these continuous knots that have brought in the kind of geometric shapes and spatial ambiguities. And this piece is called Emissary. So the black part is Japanese sumi ink with water, and then the colored parts are all paint. There are some of these dots are actually stuck on, some of them are just negative space. So there are different details there. Sometimes I write little notes to myself, or words, put in little words or fragments of words and things that are not necessarily immediately apparent.
That white square right there.
Yeah, no.
So this one, had some names in it of Emma Goldman, Emma Gonzalez, Emma Lazarus, and there's another Emma in there.
Emma Goldman, the kind of revolutionary,
Yes.
stirring person.
Yeah.
All right.
Emma Lazarus, who wrote a poem that's on the Statue of Liberty.
Oh, really?
Emma Gonzalez, the young woman who was one of the kids from the Parkland, where there was a terrible mass shooting not that long ago in Parkland, Florida. 17 young people were
Hurt, bad, killed.
killed there.
Hundreds injured, 70.
So, in this piece, as I was doing it, the black dots, there are actually 17 black dots in there, which,
Well, you really are kind of making the Gordian knot related to a whole series of contemporary and contemporary, I guess, incidents, dark side, and kind of.
But the continuous knot to me came out of it. It was something that came out of a difficult time for myself, and was really it was difficult in many ways, physically as well, for me to do any work at that time. And that started as something that I could physically do, and it felt right, and I just started pushing it in that direction. And the infinity sign and the continuity of that were things that mattered to me.
Yeah.
And then sort of integrating it with these very hard-edged things that had a more, in some ways they have a very architectural aspect to them,
Yeah.
but it's contrasting something that's very organic with something that's not organic. And the strangeness of those spaces, spatial things, so you bring in an element of uncertainty. Like you look at something, or questioning of perception. So you look at something and you think you know what's going on, and your mind goes, oh yeah, yeah, and then you start to realize, wait, something's a little off here. Something's jumping around, something doesn't quite make sense. And I think the mind really likes to try and puzzle these things out, even though you recognize, like, oh, I get it doesn't make sense, it doesn't. You still want to keep like trying to figure it out. So I think uncertainty, lingering in a place of uncertainty, it's uncomfortable, but there's a lot of value in that. I think rather than just grasping at the first decision that comes along, which is not necessarily the best. I was reading a book, this one, Nonsense by Jamie Holmes. It's subtitled The Power of Not Knowing. And it deals a lot with that subject of ambiguity and uncertainty in these times, and how when times are very uncertain, there's a move to sort of jump to something that feels very comforting or very certain, and it often leads to, that you can see that in cases of authoritarianism, where, here's a very clear answer of what it is, and you don't have to think about it anymore.
So the great energy in this kind of swirling, it could be kind of like some sort of sea monster almost, but
Yeah, it's definitely like a serpentine quality.
Yeah,
to
serpentine.
bends in it.
yeah, it's a very good word, serpentine for it, and knot, knot, serpentine knots. But it is moving around. You got all that kind of swirl. It's kind of like this is not a still knot. It's almost like it's being trapped by something. But any quick thoughts? Are we getting warm?
I would say I was looking recently at Susan Sontag's Against Interpretation, which is an ancient text by these times, I think from the 60s.
Yeah.
And she was saying something that interpretation it's the intellect's revenge against the art.
Oh, yeah.
And I really think that there's something, I agree with her about something that over-interpretation can, in a way, stifle a subjective freedom of experiencing the art and having to be, what is it? It's a visual experience, so there are things that are just there for, they don't have to be defined, and there's really no, or you can define them for yourselves, and there's no right or wrong in that. It's sort of there to, if it spurs ideas about connections between things, I think that that's ideal.
Yeah. So what are your new projects coming up over the next year or two? Anything much new on the horizon?
Oh, always, besides showing, but it's, in addition to the stuff that I'm working on here, you know, stuff on the floor over there, which is a work in progress under wraps. There are always several tangents that I've got going on, which I feel is really important to me. So I'm working on one series, but I'll also have like some things that are just one-off pieces or other groups of work that are playing with other materials or things going on at the same time. Because I think, you know, when you see work in a gallery setting, it's a very cohesive presentation of something. But I don't really think, for me anyways, that's not the way creativity really works. There's so much experimentation involved. So it's trying different things all the time, or sometimes, you know, working on something else will help you solve some totally different piece will help me solve a problem with a piece in a different series. When I used to play in a band, and I felt like playing music and writing lyrics and stuff helped me solve problems with my visual artwork, and vice versa as well. You know, it would make me think about subject matter for the band. So
yeah, I did mention that you were in a band. Was it a punk band? I think it was, wasn't it?
it was sort of a political funk alternative rock.
Okay. Sounds like fun.
Yeah, we played a bunch of clubs around New York and around the radio. It was good.
Yeah. It's a good story. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
so you never know what opportunities come along. I mean, I was trained in music as well. But the band grew out of a political art group that I was in at the time with 3 other people, and we were doing street art and all of that sort of stuff. And,
Neat.
you know,
You went to Queens, right?
I went to Queens, yes,
Yeah,
and then
okay.
moved down to New York when I was 18.
Okay.
Wow.
I know. I look back and it's like, what?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
I think about that, and it reminds me that to still be bold, you know, if I can still be as bold in that as that in my life, then I think that's good.